reading from Luke chapter 15. Now all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to him. And the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." So he told them this parable. Which one of you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness to go after the one that is lost until he finds it? When he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders and rejoices. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and neighbors, saying to them, "Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost." Just so, I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who need no repentance. Or what woman, having 10 silver coins, if she loses one of them, does not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? When she has found it, she calls together her friends, her neighbors, saying, "Rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I had lost." Just so, I tell you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. Then Jesus said, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger son said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me.' So he divided his property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant country, and there he squandered his property in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, 'How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare, and here I am dying of hunger? I will get up, go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to the slaves, 'Quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate. Now his elder son was in the field, and when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. The slave replied, 'Your brother has come home, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he has got him back safe and sound.' He then became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, 'Listen, for all these years I have been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you have never given me even a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him.' Then the father said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice, because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found.'"
We think that this video clip says a lot about the kind of love the Father in Luke 15 demonstrates. The Father has such love for his Son that, like Leia says, I still believe there is a light in him. It's a love that is so strong that it never gives up. Their son, Ben, who became Kylo Ren, was a Jedi that turned to the dark side and was in training to replace Darth Vader, but they still didn't give up on him.
The perspective of the older son. The older brother is loyal, hardworking, caring, respectful. Forgiveness is slower for the older brother. His jealousy and anger are only hurting the older brother, nobody else. Denominations and conclusions based on this way of thinking. Yeah. It's not fair. And then it could be shown with the branches of Christianity that were split off and changed as it happened over time.
The perspective of the youngest son at the end of the story is being overwhelmed by the amount of forgiveness he received from his father. He knew that he had hurt his father. He knew that he basically said to his father, "Money and independence are more important than you." Plus, he failed at his dream, or maybe that was his dream, to just waste all his money. He was not accepting his father to forgive him, just to work for him because he knew his father was fair. Instead of accepting his son's offer to work as a servant for him, he forgave him and restored him. In Luke 15, verses 20 through 24 says, "But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. The father said to the slaves, 'Quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And get the fatted calf and kill it. And let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate." Fully restored as the father's son, one of the questions here could be, will the youngest son do it again? What happens when the father dies? Does the youngest son get another inheritance? Some of us are uncomfortable with the acceptance of forgiveness and restoration because we want to earn it. We feel like it's not fair that we receive that kind of grace. Thank God it's not fair. Our response should be not to earn grace, but to be thankful for it. Gratitude is the result of overwhelming forgiveness.
All right. Practiced this in front of my few friends yesterday, and it was pretty nerve-wracking, so see how this goes. When we first started breaking down this parable, we decided to see who we all related with in the story and how we felt we'd act like in our past. The group for the younger brother was definitely a smaller group because nobody really wanted to admit that we've been ungrateful and greedy from the people that love us. Anyways, like the younger brother, I took what my parents had given me for granted, but instead of money, it was my entire life. Although I grew up going to a good school and coming home to a nice home with family meals and all of that, I still thought in some world I deserved better. And I thought that for many aspects for my life. I went through about a year of being very selfish and closed-minded to all that I had and what was good for me. The main thing we talked about considering the younger brother coming home was his gratitude that he showed towards his family when his father welcomed him home with open arms. The way I looked at it with my life was that after I made some decisions in my life that negatively reflected my character, I wasn't shunned from my family or church community. So growing up with my two older siblings and my parents, we did pretty normal family things. We went to apple orchards, baked together, went on family vacations, the usual. Our parents were very good to us and still are, of course. They were around for us whether we needed them to be or not, and supported us with whatever we wanted to do that would make us happy. Although I was involved in church and volleyball and my parents did whatever they needed to do to make me happy, I still didn't make the best decisions reflecting those activities. Between 8th grade and freshman year, I couldn't have been more unappreciative and distant from my family and friends. I decided that my parents didn't treat me well enough, and if you know my parents at all, we both know that's very inaccurate. I told myself that I was the least important thing in my entire extended family and that my friends didn't care about me, so I tried to take my own life. I was being careless with the life that my parents worked so hard to give me and help me through, and I gave up. I let myself and I let others believe that they weren't good enough parents for me and that my family didn't love me enough. I rarely talked to them before I did this, and afterwards I still didn't let them in, which was only hurting me. So I was in a very bad place, and to only make it worse, or which I thought would make it better, I started smoking and drinking. I know what you're thinking, but I was only 14 and I wasn't doing it for fun. I only had one other friend that ever did it, and we were both doing it to void out our lives. I remember getting in the car and coming home reeking of weed or alcohol and being so utterly offended when my parents would even ask me about it. It definitely didn't help our already fragile relationship, but not because of them, but because of how I was acting and how I treated them. My parents always know when something's up, and I wish I learned that right away so I wouldn't have fought and screamed at them for months, acting as if I was perfect. I remember the last day I let myself get so out of control, and turned my relationship around with my parents. I had gone to a friend's house and I asked my dad for some money, and he was very concerned because he knew what it was for. But I got so mad at him for assuming, and I was yelling and crying about how he needs to trust me and stop treating me like a child. So he gave me the money, and guess what I went and bought? So I was with some girlfriends and planned on staying in and not doing anything too stupid. Nothing more stupid than being a drunk 14-year-old girl. But then a cute boy from school texted me and wanted to hang out, so of course we went. And on a scale from 1 to 10, I'm sure you can guess how terrible that turned out. I woke up the next day blatantly messed up and lying to my parents. I remember I just wanted to be able to tell them the truth because they would put taking care of me before yelling at me for the time being. They were the parents that would hold my hair back when I was throwing up and making sure I was okay because above all else, they just wanted me to be safe. That was definitely another low point for me, and I was treating my parents like crap before that, during that, and after that. Still, when they just wanted to help me and make sure I stayed out of trouble. Now that I've grown up, for the most part, I've looked back realizing my parents could have shipped me off and not dealt with me because I seemed pretty dead set on not changing for quite a while. They gave me so many chances to come clean and have them help me get out of this time. My grades weren't great and I got kicked off the volleyball team, and I was pretty close to rock bottom with my school reputation. Of course, I had the worst parents ever because they wouldn't let me go out and party all the time, and so I was just not in a good place with them. Ever since freshman year, when all of that ended, it turned around my relationship with them, and it's only grown stronger with my parents and other family because they never gave up on me, even though I gave up on myself and them repeatedly. They've helped me get back from so many stupid decisions I've made damaging the life that they gave me. I haven't gotten drunk since that day freshman year, and it's because of my parents, and the idea of hurting them that bad again makes me cringe because of how mean I was, and I never want to be in that position again. I've never been more grateful for my parents in my life because if they were as laid back and careless as I wanted them to be when I was younger, I wouldn't be standing up here proud of how far I've come with them. Another place I was extremely joyful to be taken care of during all of this and after this was this church. Not that I was worried about being kicked out or shunned, because this is one of the most accepting places I've ever been in my life, but throughout that year I sinned about 1,000,000 times and I wasn't sure what to expect. So at this point, after I cleaned up, I still didn't have anything too stable. I was still rebuilding my relationship with my family, but I really needed a solid group of people and a family outside of my family, and that's exactly what I found here. For the first semester of Koyo, before I started taking things more seriously, I came and went as I pleased, and I was always on my phone, not giving anyone a second of my time. I definitely didn't care about myself a few years ago, let alone anybody else here. I didn't contribute to discussion or do any community work that I didn't have to, and I think some of the leaders were pretty fed up with it, at least I know I would have been. After I had come into Faith Singers hungover about 12 times or skipped to go do things that I probably shouldn't have been doing, I finally had to cut it out. Once I was there sober for a few months, I remember it was about March of my freshman year when it finally clicked for me. One of Eric's sermons was based around the question, why do you come to church? And at first I was thinking that it was just a routine. It's what I've done every Sunday since I was little. I thought about it more over the next few weeks and realized it's because these people are my family. My relationship with them was so honest and fun that it changed my perspective in so many ways. Jim would always say a prayer during practice or before we went up to sing, telling us how awesome we are and telling us that God don't make no junk. And hearing that every week was all the reassurance that I needed that this is where I belonged with all of these people. I started committing more just in time to be ready for tour rehearsals and get ready for mission trip. Tour and mission trip after my freshman year were honestly the greatest experience of my life, and the trips that we went on last summer were equally as fun and worth all my time and energy, but the first two I went on were so touching for me, and it was exactly what I needed at the time, and it helped me believe in myself and what I could do even more than I had before. I worked hard for myself and everyone else there from now on and still plan to in the future. I'll never forget the relationships I gained through the trips, mainly with some of the weirdos that graduated last year, but also with everyone still here today. I'm extremely grateful for everybody, and I'm grateful for all the adults that are like second and third mothers to me over the last few years. Because of how loved I was just for being here over the last few years, it's changed my perspective a lot. My biggest commitment in my life is to this church because I owe you guys so much. Ever since the last couple years, I've joined a discussion class to continue the question, why do we come to church and why do we believe what we believe? I've earned over 100 service hours just through this church and joined a board and become the happiest person I've ever been spending time in this church. And it's because of Faith Singers, Koyo, and everyone here that I've grown closer with every time I come. Like the younger brother, he came back expecting little to nothing from his father because of his actions, but his father still would have given him the world on a silver platter if his son asked for it. It's because of our parents that it's their job to endlessly love us and care for us no matter how bad we screw up. So I'd just like to thank my parents right now for never giving up on me when I gave up on everything, so thank you.
So feel free to stand and sing when you feel comfortable or when you get the hang of the song. So. Your love is higher than the mountains, deeper than the oceans, wider than the heavens, and brighter than the stars. And I will sing of how wonderful you are. Your love is higher than the mountains, deeper than the oceans, wider than the heavens, and brighter than the stars. And I will sing of how wonderful you are. You are mighty. You're an holy. You're unchangeable and true. There is none like you. How wonderful you are. How wonderful you are. Your love is higher than the mountains, deeper than the oceans, wider than the heavens, and brighter than the stars. And I will sing of how wonderful you are. You are mighty. You're an holy. You're unchangeable and true. There's none like you. How wonderful you are. How wonderful you are. Your love is higher than the mountains, deeper than the oceans, wider than the heavens, and brighter than the stars. And I will sing of how wonderful you are. Your love is higher than the mountains, deeper than the oceans, wider than the heavens, and brighter than the stars. And I will sing of how wonderful you are.
holding back tears. Now I know why. Well, didn't they do a wonderful job? And Emma, you know, your story, here we are just coming into Lent, and you just brought us to Easter. I mean, the very power that brought you back to life is the very power that raised Jesus from the dead. You just bore very concrete witness to exactly what this faith is all about. And this meal brings it all home. As we remember on a night of betrayal and desertion, Jesus took bread and he, after giving thanks, he broke it, saying, "This is my body, which is broken for you. Do this as often as you eat of it in remembrance of me." So likewise, after the supper, he took the cup, saying, "This is the cup of the new covenant in my blood. Do this as often as you drink of it in remembrance of me." By eating this bread and drinking this cup, we remember Christ's death. We celebrate Christ's resurrection. And we come to know that we are all invited to that party. We are all prodigals. We are all elder brothers. We're all brought to one table to celebrate a grace that exceeds our ability to comprehend. You do not have to be a member of Countryside Church or subscribe to any particular doctrine or dogma to come forward to this table. All that we ask is if your heart calls you forward, come, knowing you are most welcome here. So likewise, if you'd prefer to receive communion from your seat, simply raise your hand as a deacon passes and you'll be served there. Or if you'd prefer simply to remain seated, no, that's okay too. However you wish to participate is fine. But if you do come forward, we invite you to take a piece of bread, dip it into the cup. And perhaps, thanks to our youth this morning, as we taste this bread and this juice, we'll also be reminded of that power of resurrection that lives and dwells in us and invites us deeper into our true home in God's love. As the deacons come forward to prepare, or the youth come forward to prepare the feast, at this time, I invite you to join me in reminding ourselves who we are and whose we are. We are an open and affirming family of faith, welcoming all to God's table of love and acceptance. We are diverse, yet united by Christ's example. We care for one another, support one another, and challenge one another to become all that God creates us to be. We work together to nurture our community and to promote peace and justice in our conflicted world.